Hmm. No clue where I did with it. Oh, sent item.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Operations Management and Budget and Government Accountability budget hearings for fiscal year 2021-2022. My name is Councilman TJ Clark, and I am the Majority Leader and Co-Chair of the Operations Management and Budget and Government Accountability and Majority Leader for the City Council. And we are joined today by our Superintendent of Schools for Hartford Public Schools, Dr. Leslie Torres Rodriguez. And we are going to be having with us today, in addition to the Hartford Board of Ed, our City Treasurer's Office, our Town and City Clerk's Office, and our Register of Voters Office. And with no other further introductions, actually, I just want to introduce my council colleagues that are here in order that is presented on the screen. We have Councilwoman Marilyn Rossetti, Councilwoman Shirley Surgeon, Councilman John Gale, Councilman James Sanchez, Councilman Nick LeBron, our Council President, Natalie Rosado, and we also are joined by our Chief Financial Officer and Director of Management and Budget and Grants, which is Jen Hockenhall. And Jen, we are in your hands.
Thank you, Majority Leader Clark. Good evening, good afternoon, Council. Great to see you again. And I will turn it over to Dr. Torres Rodriguez to present her presentation.
Thank you and good evening, everyone. Just want to do a process check. Am I presenting or is someone gonna show my slides and I can speak to that? Just
yes, if you could share your screen, that would be great.
Great. Okay,
Thank
give
you.
me 1 second.
We can't hear you. You're muted.
Can I just get a thumbs up that everyone can see the screen? No, you can't. No, you cannot see the
No,
screen.
we can't. We just did. Now we can't.
Yeah. Better? Great. Thank you.
There we go.
So I would like to begin the presentation with just an overview of where we are today before I dive into what the budget that the Board of Education did approve. And so my hope is to give you an update as to our 2020-2021 budget, the budget features and economics for next year's budget, the actual budget that was approved, and then if I have time, to share with you some intentional investments that are part of next year's budget and some highlights that are part of our COVID relief funding. I know the presentation doesn't call for COVID related funding, but should there be time in my 30 minutes, I certainly can share those with you. And so as with many urban districts, Hartford Public Schools has a challenge around our structural deficit with the costs that continue to rise, faster than our revenue. And, you know, as we reflect on the pandemic, we know that it has exacerbated many of our challenges, right? We now have a greater and deeper inequity around student needs, ongoing constraints on service delivery with still some unpredictable cost implications. And then, of course, increased financial pressures with drops in additional revenue and enrollment. I will go deeper into our enrollment challenges in this presentation. And so the structural deficit is true for us every year. You know, for example, looking ahead, we usually look at anywhere from $8 to $10 million in increases in terms of our special education tuition, as well as our perennial contractual increases, which are around $4 million, right? So you put those two numbers together and we're looking at a, you know, $12, $13 million annual deficit just with those two of the major cost drivers, right? That does not account for any new strategic investments. And so I wanted to just name that because that's our reality. And in terms of our the features of school funding, the budget process and the funding allows us to, you know, have clarity on how the resources are allocated to our specific schools, making sure that our funding is consistent with student needs, that we align budgets, our school budgets that are in better alignment with not only the district priorities, but with our school priorities. And then that we clearly identify what our school leaders do and do not have flexibility in terms of funding allocations. And you see here just a visual below that we start with a starter budget for every school that is based on you know, national recommendation standards for, you know, how many students to each social worker, how many students for a guidance counselor. And then we continue to add on depending on school characteristics, right? What's the size of the school, knowing that, you know, lower schools, elementary schools need a different resource allocation than high schoolers, priorities that we have at the school, or at the district, and then the non-negotiables in our district model of excellence, which align to what our community identified as priorities for us. So I wanted to just take a moment to speak to where we currently are. And I don't expect any of you to remember where we were last year that I presented, but you know, you see here what the where we ended the year and what our school board did adopt last year, where it says recommended. So we did end with a the $12.2 million deficit, right? Our board knew, our board was aware that that was the deficit, and we presented a mitigation strategy, as you see there, you know, the 4.9, the 1.3, and the board did vote on the budget with that proposed mitigation. So you look to the actuals column, and this is where we are. You know, our revenue was decreased and the expenses were higher. And so actually what that was, it was at a 17.9 deficit. And you see there some of what we did to mitigate. We did not go into the OPEB at all. There were some efficiencies in our lease from 960 Main. We could not, you know, apply the entire 1.3 because we had to still pay a partial rent for the Welcome Center that stayed at 960 Main through October. And then instead of applying the 5.5 vacancy lapse, we actually were able to apply $11.8 million of vacancy lapses this year because we did not have, right, all of the positions filled, obviously due to the pandemic. So nonetheless, I wanted just to provide you with an overview of what it was that we did and where we are today. So as of March 31st, we did have a $2 million surplus. However, you see there what is still pending for us. Excess cost is those are the expenses for special education students. We get reimbursed for the majority of that. However, we have to project a year in advance. We let the state know what costs we anticipate having. And what the state does is the following year, they do their calibration and they let us know whether or not we were accurate. If we were accurate, then the city gets the excess cost grant that we said we were going to spend. If we were short, we essentially have to give the money back. And so last year, we did not get to charge, if you will, all of those projections. And so there's a $2.7 million, give back, if you will. The state is going to have to have that money back. And so we have to mitigate for that. And then you see in terms of Medicaid and third-party billing, those are supports and services that we are able to provide for students, but we couldn't provide for students. For example, some of the therapy supports that we have staff that we can actually bill for. So we were not able to do that because of the pandemic. But we still have the staff that we have to pay for. And we also have some workers' compensation settlements there. And then we are trying to see how it is that we're going to identify funds, if possible, for the track and the light at Hartford Public High School. That was a project that is halfway done. And so to the extent that we're able to identify those funds, we will. So that is where we are. And now we're going to move into the budget that was adopted. So how do our budgeted expenditures continue to support equity and ongoing needs in the district? And so I want to give you visibility into our enrollment. Here, it is something that a visual that I share with you annually, so that you can see the decline over the years. And so prior to 2019, the average annual decline was 2.9%. And, then we see that, in 2019 and in 2020, the average decline was 5.2%. When I think about the last year, right, this year that we're in, that enrollment was actually, the decline increased to 6%. We know that some of our families did not enroll their children, especially in the pre-K kindergarten grades. So it's something that we have to continue to monitor because, as you know, with enrollment comes the revenue. Not going to go into a lot of the details here. Essentially, this is just a complete view of our schools and where they are in terms of their enrollment changes. And to the left there, I have the schools that have the lowest enrollment levels, right? And the challenge that this poses is that it's really hard to fund schools that are that have such low enrollment, because the need in these schools doesn't necessarily change. The number of students changes, but the deep level of need still exists in those schools, and we have to resource the schools. This is the starter budget. Up top is the initial allocation that we give all of our schools. And below, you see added investments that were part of the budget. These were priorities that we had identified pre-pandemic around our chronic absenteeism supports for our English learners, supports for our middle schools and a magnet school supplement for our magnet schools, so that they also can continue to have some level of attractiveness in terms of their theme.
Majority Leader, excuse me, Superintendent, Majority Leader. Can
Yes,
you
Councilwoman.
go back one slide, please?
Absolutely.
Can I just ask a question, Majority Leader?
Go right ahead.
Why is Renzulli Gifted and Talented Academy, even though it's under 200, not listed in the 7 under 300 schools?
That is actually considered a program. It's not, it's a program within a larger school. And so
I should know that, but what school is it in?
it's sharing the space with classical.
And
so
we have it
Renzulli,
called out as a school, though?
yes, it is. Renzulli has always had, it has never had more than 150 students. So that is a very different enrollment design. It's a great question.
Should it be included then in this? Does it skew this school enrollment?
Which school enrollment for classical?
Well, you're presenting the schools and you're now saying that's not a school.
It is a school, but in terms of your question around why is not on the left side? Yes, do I understand your question?
Yeah, yeah. Well, now you're making me say, why is it included in the school column? But yes, my initial question was, why is it not included in the 7 schools with the under 300 students?
Because the design of the school has always been a small design, whereas the other schools, right, started off as much larger schools.
Okay.
in facilities that call for much larger enrollment.
Okay. Thank you.
Great
Thank
question.
you, Majority Leader.
You're welcome, Madam Superintendent. You may proceed.
Thank you. And so again, this was just to give you an idea of the starter budget and then how we continue to overlay supports and resources to our schools. I spoke earlier about the out-of-district tuition trends. And so just wanted to give you a broad overview here around our tuition. And so tuition here is, when a student has an out-of-district placement, that is tuition that we have to continue to pay for. And so although the out-of-district costs are still increasing, we did see that there was a slowing down of that growth curve. We continue to analyze this for us, given that we have to think about long-term sustainability strategy, and this is one that our special education needs for some of our students those don't stop. So it's something that we are very mindful of as we kind of go through the budgets every single year. So I want to give you an overview here of where we were and what was adopted here. There were minimal changes, if you see here, to our salaries and contractual. Our salaries line as contractual union increases were actually offset by lower salaries of our new hires. Our purchase property services expenses were down due to the move from right when we went to Buckley High School and the elimination of the majority of that rent at 960 Main. I just spoke about the out-of-district placements and the out-of-district tuition. And so system-wide services were up, and that is where our out-of-district tuition goes to, that line. There is a slight increase here, as you can see as well, in the equipment line. That was due to an increase in our Carl Perkins grant, and that is a grant that supports career and technical education. And we anticipate, new technology there being purchased with that grant. In our other miscellaneous expenses, we see that it was up for two reasons. One, last year, the $12 million deficit was booked to this line. And this year, this is where the non-lapsing credit, the 5.6 million was booked. And so obviously the difference between those two is 6.6 million. So it does look like there's an increase in cost, but it's actually a reduction in the credit to the budget. And then lastly, the other sundry is down due to lower fringe costs. Our fringe costs, as you can imagine, are down due to lower use, and those have been validated by our partners at Siegel. Next slide here is just an overview of our major cost drivers. Right, our teachers, our salaries, our out-of-district tuition costs that I just spoke about, our insurance and health benefits, the starter budget that I spoke about, right, what we start all of our schools with, transportation, and these account for 76% of our budget. Another way of looking at how our budget is distributed and our resources. And the punchline here is that 96% of the approved GB is allocated to schools, school buildings, and direct student services. This is a slide that I always like to come back to because it does give an overview of our board, in collaboration with myself and my team, have been very invested in trying to identify equity moves, and we've had to do that, but also have to, along the years, as you can see, we've had to do some mitigations, and you see that over the last 5 years, there's been a total of 436 positions that have been eliminated in Hartford Public Schools. The majority of those, 349 of those have been in schools, and 86 of those at central office. And in the past years, to address the structural deficit, yes, we've had to, reduce central office overhead, certain positions across schools. But, it was also a need to consolidate and co-locate our schools. We've also been able to have investments in our budget. We've invested in student engagement specialists to support schools with re-engaging our students, additional teachers that work with students who are learning English as their second language, additional middle school counselors. We did not have middle school counselors, and we know how important it is to start exposing students in earlier grades, right, to college and career opportunities and knowledge, and then investments in middle school athletics. These were some of the position changes as part of the adopted budget. This has already shifted a little bit, but the big picture here is that we did add 15.9 positions across schools, and at central office, we added 3 instructional technology district-wide coaches. They're attached to central office, but their work is done in school. They're servicing and supporting schools. Now that we had to go to a one-to-one device district, we added 2 contact tracing nurses to help us, obviously, within the pandemic. Our chief of operations was vacant, and so we filled that position. Chief of staff I decreased. There was a deputy superintendent that was eliminated, and instead a chief of staff role. And then you see some others in our business and business office. This is a slide that I wanted to spend just a few seconds on, given that I often hear this narrative that, we don't invest in athletics or music and arts. And so I wanted to just take the opportunity to give an overview of the total investment. So we have a total of 156 full-time positions for art, music, drama, and dance, and physical, education and health across all of our schools. And then you can see additional investments. And this is all part of general budget here, right? Our middle school expenses, high school athletic expenses. So $2.6 million is the investment in our athletics and unified, our athletics. And then below, we have an additional $400,000 investments in unified arts programs. Some of you know we have a great partner with Hartford Performs. And so, that's embedded in those investments. So a total of $3 million is the investment in our budget for arts, athletics, and extracurricular activities. I'm going to skip over the glossary, and I want to be mindful of time. I believe I only have 4 minutes. And so I guess asking whether or not I pause for questions or I can continue to speak about COVID relief funding and those allocations.
No, you may proceed with the rest of your presentation, and then
Thank you.
Enter into a question and answering period after you finish.
Thank you. So I just spoke about budget, and now I want to make the connection to COVID relief funds. And, the state identified what the priorities, the state level priorities for the ESSER. ESSER is the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Funds. And those four state level priorities by the state align very well to what we are committed to doing and our actual district priorities. I do want to share that there has been a change as of just this week. We know that the ESSER allocation was $45.7 million. We actually submitted that application to the state. We did 50 hours of engagement with our community to develop the strategic plan that informed the ESSER 2 application. It was approved by the state in short order with no significant revisions required. And so while we're proud of that, what we were a little disappointed to learn this week is that we had expected, well, it was communicated to us that we were receiving $127 million for the American Rescue Plan allocation, and instead we're receiving $98.5 million. So, that's a difference of $28.5 million. So a little disappointed there, given that we have to now go back and shift on some of the strategies that we had identified based on not only student needs, but what we heard from the community. And so this is where we currently are with regard to how we have planned out our use for 93.8% or $133.6 million of that total infusion of funding. The uses of these funds are guided by our strategic plan and also by pandemic health and safety needs. Our planning work, will continue to guide the remaining, 6.2%. Now that we have to go back and think about, the strategies that we had identified, were going to be for year 2 and year 3. So we have to see how we can calibrate on that $28.5 million, gap that we now have. So this is where we are with the ESSER application. And, we want to make sure that we maximize spending on academic and social emotional learning. Those were two of the areas that all of our stakeholders identified as areas that we should prioritize. And so, as you can see here, 38 million of the 45.7 are dedicated to academic and SEL recovery. There are 4 must wins. I'll go into those in the next slide. And then you see that there's still $5.4 million for PPE, additional nursing and custodial services, and some HVAC upgrades that some of our schools needed. And the remaining much smaller percentages are to support technology and capacity at central office to help our schools implement some of these strategies. So the 38 million that I just spoke about, that 84% of the total ESSER allocation, this is an overview of the 4 buckets that those $38 million distribute across. And this is in alignment with what we heard from our staff, our families, our students, and our partners, right? So 15 million towards expanding learning time and targeted support during the school day and outside of the school day, right? Expanding our summer school programming, having intersession academies when we are either on the winter break or other vacations, having opportunities for some of our students to come back and accelerate on their learning. And we are going to have schools that are going to be open on Saturdays and in the evenings for additional supports for our students. In the purple bucket there, increasing support for our teachers and our school leaders. That's something else that we heard loud and clear, that students are having a deeper level of need, and so we also have to support our teachers and our school leaders so that they can know how to better support our students and accelerate their learning as well. In the red area, connecting every student to an adult advocate and expanding wellness supports, we are having $7 million invested in family and community partnerships, especially the expansion of our community school model. We had 7 schools that were community schools. We're looking for now to having 11 schools. And with that comes additional mental health services and mental health support and wellness spaces across all 39 of our schools. And lastly, we have the cultivation of our sustainable teacher pipeline. We know that we are fortunate that we have this quick and large infusion of funding over the next 2 to 3 years, but then that funding is going to sunset. That funding is going to go away. And we wanted to find out what is the strategy that we know can build us up for long-term sustainability. And one of those is, tending to our pipeline for teachers. We want to make sure that we have paraeducators that want to continue to, they want to go to school and they want to, they have aspirations to become teachers and social workers and counselors. And so how can we support that? And how can we currently support our teachers who have aspirations and, quite frankly, the capacity to be teacher leaders or proceed into administrator roles? And so we're going to develop some resources and time to developing that strategy. And then at the bottom across, you see equity innovation grants. That is a much smaller amount, but we wanted to make sure that we allowed schools to have opportunities to apply for mini grants to either expand on some of the practices that they have already started. And this is to prioritize also some of our high need schools, like in our neighborhood schools. And this here is an overview of the additional investments with the ESSER funds over the next 2 to 3 years. And some of you might be wondering, wow, you're going to add 173 positions, and you just said that 2 to 3 years from now, the money is going to run away, right? It's going to run dry. And so we thought about, well, we don't want to be faced with having to cut 123 positions. So we were able to analyze our data and foresee that we are going to essentially be okay, because we will have part of the exit plan options, if you will, for some of these people, for the majority of these people, are a calibration that happens through natural attrition, right? Every year we have anywhere from 100 to 120, 130 positions that are vacated because of retirements, because teachers move into other roles in our district, like coaching roles, and or they leave to other districts. And so we feel that all will balance out at the end of the second or third year. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. I do appreciate your thorough presentation. It's always good to receive an update from you regarding the status of our Hartford Public School District. If Jen, if you don't mind, if you can eliminate the sharing screen. All right. And I'm happy to mention that I think we are joined by Councilwoman Wildalise Bermudez. Madam Superintendent, I have a question. It's kind of budget related, but it's more so overall with the district. Will the district ever get to a point, in your opinion, understanding the deep effects of COVID-19 on our family and children, and also to our teachers, but will the district ever get to the point maybe of adopting a model similar to what Capital Prep has regarding year-round school, just to really close in the educational and achievement gap?
I think those are conversations that we want to engage in broadly, right? There's deeper conversation that we have to have with our families, certainly with our staff. That was one of many models that we were thinking about earlier on, right? There are many options, but thinking about the fact that, people are tired, they're exhausted, they're beyond exhausted, right? And so for us to say that's the model that we're going to implement for next year, one is not fair, and two, we really have to think about that long term. With an extended day and extended year comes cost.
Yeah.
And that's a strategy that warrants deep engagement and deep analysis for sustainability, quite frankly. When we think about mitigating the effects, you've always heard me say this is a 3 to 5 year approach. I know that the funding that we got is 2 to 3 years, but I see it more long term than that.
Okay. Which dovetails into my other question as to, has there, with these preliminary conversations with maybe a few schools, or let's just say for conversation's sake, district-wide, a transition to a more of a year-round program, has there been any cost analysis done on a preliminary basis, or anything that you can actually speak to that's been a model that you might be thinking of? And I don't want to, give people hope or anything like that, but just as far as just us having a conversation, see how that's going to be budgeted after year 3.
We did do some very broad initial modeling for the early grades, the lower grades. We were looking at anywhere from $18 to $22 million of an increase, right? This is whole school, year-round investments. It's significant. is significant. And some of the things to still get at what the state and federal requirements are, which, you know, these funds are specifically calling for us to accelerate, right, the learning loss. You know, one of the ways that we're doing that with these funds is we are targeting certain schools and certain grade levels for a reduction in class size. Now, we can't do that across the board, right? The funds don't allow for that. There's not enough funds for that. But we also have to look at it from an equity lens. We can't just say, well, let's just reduce class size all across the district. Then that's not being equitable, right? Because we know that some schools need additional support more than others. And so that's something that we're going to do. We're also going to have intensive tutorial support for our students. The research shows that when you provide intensive tutorial support to smaller groups of 2 to 3 students, 2 to 3 times a week, that actually accelerates students and catches students up faster. But it is the most expensive strategy. And so we've built in funding allocation for that through ESSER and through ARP. The challenge that we're going to have is finding the tutors, because we know that we had a much smaller scale tutorial program this year that our teachers are amazing. We had about 130 of our teachers. They're still doing it. You know, this is after school and on weekends. I'm hopeful that some of our teachers would want to do that next year, but I'm also mindful that, you know, they might not want to, and we have to respect that. And so the reason why I'm giving you these examples, Councilman Clark, is because even though we can't get at the extending of the entire school year or year-round school at the moment, we are trying to address the student need in different ways.
Thank you for that explanation. And so if I saw your presentation correctly, the ARP got reduced to $88 million or so?
98.
98. Now, I know that you still now have to go back to look at everything again to see how that will affect your planning and things that the board adopted. But now, as far as a short/long-term sustainability, have you done any projections as to after this money expires in 2024, what is it going to cost the district to maintain those level of services?
Well, you know, I would say if we add up all the money, the $144 million, if that means that if we decide that we have to keep all of the added services, right? That means the teacher incentives and the retention incentives that we're adding, the tutorial supports that I talked about, the class reduction, the class size reduction in some of our classrooms and in some of our schools, the expansion of the summer program. We went from 12 schools to 30 schools, and to serving kinder through 3rd. Now we're going to be serving kinder through 12th grade, right? So if we are saying that we're going to maintain all of that, then it's a 144. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's the $45 million a year, because that is what the entire strategy is going to cost per year, each year over the next 3 years.
Thank you.
It would be a matter of eliminating, Councilman Clark, like saying, okay, so how much would it be if we eliminated the tutorial component? Or maybe that's not what we eliminate. Maybe we eliminate summer program for, 15 schools instead of 30 schools.
Gotcha. I understand. I have plenty more questions regarding a lot of other things, but I open the floor to my colleagues, and I will go with the first person I saw, which is Councilman Gale.
Thank you, Mr. Majority Leader, and thank you, Ms. Torres. It's always fascinating to look at your your budget, but it's also very depressing at times. And I want to just focusing on the decline in enrollment figures that you provided. I did the math, and this is my Hartford High math, mind you. We've had an almost 20% decline in enrollment over the last 6 years. And at the same time, of course, the city population has not declined by 20%. In fact, the city population, I believe, has remained flat during that time and over the last 6 years. And we know that there was a time, well, what it says to me anyway, is that people with children of school age are either moving out of Hartford, and I'm sure there's a part of that, but just as important, people with school age children are not moving into Hartford. So we're not getting any new parties coming in to make up for that. And certainly there was a time when people felt comfortable, you know, they knew the Blue Hills, they knew Rawson School, they would move into a house there because they felt comfortable with the school, or they knew the West End and they knew Webster, or they knew the South End and they knew Kennelly, or they knew Bachelor, but none of that exists anymore. Or for the most part, it doesn't exist. You can't move into the West End and go to Webster. You can't move into the South End and go to Kennelly. So I'm wondering if the board and you have any strategy for addressing this, you know, this particular concern, this decline in enrollment. This really, what it says to me is it's basically a lack of confidence in our schools by people who have school-age children. Given the opportunity, they're getting out and they're not coming in. So do we have a strategy for addressing this lack of confidence?
Looks like her video is frozen. So let's give her some time to reboot if she needs to. All right, let's stand in recess for about 5 minutes just to get the superintendent to come back on.
The extent to which you and the school board have a strategy for addressing this decline, this dramatic decline in enrollment in the school that I attribute to a lack of confidence in our school system. So take it.
Yeah, so I could see how that would be one reason why. I also want to highlight that, and I think you were alluding to this as well. You know, folks are having less children than they were before. They're certainly not moving into urban areas as they were before. And there's also the ecosystem of school choice, right? We know that, seats are offered, additional seats are offered, and, students and families make choices to magnet schools and open choice districts, including our own magnets. But, those students are some of those students are in our neighborhood schools. And so the one strategy, right, that we all painfully lived was the consolidation of the school district. We just last year finished that strategy. And so it takes time for a calibration to happen, if you will. The other piece that I think is very important is, for the first time in a long time in Hartford Public Schools, neighborhood schools are being resourced most appropriately. That was not happening before. There were significant disparities. And I'll give you an example. We had schools, magnet schools. We had a magnet school that was being allotted $1,400 more per student than another neighborhood school with serving the same age groups, grade levels. And I only raised that because, to your point about families not having faith, if a school is under-resourced, then that experience for the student is going to be very different. And so I am hopeful that we can continue to resource all of our schools appropriately and get back on a more solid footing. I cannot control, right, the external condition in terms of, for example, Chef, right? We know that Chef offers students great opportunities, and we want that for all of our students. But it also, has impact, right? Because students have to come from somewhere. The other issue is that we know that not just in Hartford, but across, I think there's probably 2 cities that I know of that have an increase in their population, South Windsor being one of them. And I believe Danbury is the other one. But aside from that, I don't know that there's any other town that, has, the trend going in the opposite direction.
Well, thank you for that. Second question, I did the math on the number you gave us for sports and arts, music, and extracurricular. And that was 3 million out of a total budget of 424 million, which is less than 1%. It's 0.7% of the budget. My question, and just as an editorial comment, it seems very, very small, but I don't know. So my question is, how does that compare? Hartford spending 0.7% of its budget on these things. How does that compare with a state average or a state recommendation, or the other schools in our area, if you know, and if not, can you find out and get back to us with it?
We can certainly do a comparison with other districts and especially other urban centers like ours. I will say that it is the highest it has ever been in Hartford.
Well, we certainly appreciate that. We'd love to see it get higher, I think, because I think it's way below what other people spend just based on empirical data. But I don't have the data. I can just look out and see that we do not seem to have what others seem to have. Last question.
That I know for sure. I know for sure, especially in the lower grades. Right. We started 2 years ago offering, for example, middle school sports across all middle schools. We now last year and this year have sports at the lower grades, right, in the elementary grades. And so we are inching our way to doing more. Point definitely well taken. Absolutely.
Well, we'd love to help you get there by feet as opposed to by inches. So at least this council person would.
Great. Yes. I'm there with you in terms of the funding. We know that we have priorities, right? It's a hard balance. So to the extent that we can collaborate on how to maximize that would be great.
Well, you're going to hear in my next question, my priority, which is calling for you to maybe change the balance slightly. So my last question is, the use of school facilities for after-school recreational programs. We've been pushing at Council for a more robust recreation department here within the city. And part of our push has been asking our recreation department to partner with the schools to take advantage of all these school buildings we have that have recreation facilities that go unused once school is over. And so, you know, what we're looking for is, you know, just a better symbiosis there. So I don't know if you can speak to that at all.
Yeah, I think it depends on what that looks like and what our contractual obligations are. You know, it's not just open the schools, right? We know that we have security and we have custodial needs that we have to tend for. And so to the extent that, you know, the partnership allows to problem solve for that, absolutely. We're actually looking to do some of that this summer for summer programming, right? To partner with the city, the recreation department, and other CBOs to do exactly what you're describing.
Well, again, our hope and desire is that it can move faster rather than slower, and that imaginative minds can be put to solving all of the issues that are raised with respect to liability and other such matters. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman LeBron.
Thank you, Majority Leader, through you. Good evening, Superintendent.
Good evening.
I want to first thank you for this presentation this year. Last year, we weren't able to access anyone's presentations. It was, you know, the whole COVID thing and online. So we submitted questions and you answered them that way. But so this was very informative for all of us. But backing up, I want to take the opportunity to really thank you for your tireless and relentless efforts to the schools. You're the hardest working person I know in the district. And so I want to thank you on behalf of myself, my council colleagues, and the community. So thank you for all your efforts, Doctor. So the first question I have, the Majority Leader and Councilman Gale asked a lot of my questions. So I have kind of three major buckets. So in regards to the population versus the overall budget. So we have a population decline, and I know you addressed to that, but just for clarity, the amount of money remains the same, right? Through ECS, like, so the funding hasn't been diminished, right? The population diminished, but the funding hasn't, correct?
In terms of ECS, yes, it's there are other funding streams that continue to diminish.
Okay.
For example, Alliance, right? The Alliance grant, the entitlement grants, yes, those continue to diminish.
So in essence, would it be safe to say that the per pupil cost per student has gone up as a result of the population decline?
Per pupil cost goes up based on need. Okay. Right, because we can have, for example, 100 students this year with a certain level of need, and next year we might only have 80 students, but those 80 students might have a deeper level of need than those 100 students.
So in the population decline, if I'm hearing you correctly, based upon the question that Councilman Gale had, the population decline that we have seen has been the traditional students. And so therefore the percentage of students who have more needs have increased. Is that what that is?
I'm not sure what you mean with the traditional students.
Well, I hate using bucket terms, right? So, you know, maybe SPED students or students who support services. So because of the population decline, would it be safe to say that that population decline was the quote unquote students who don't need those support system, extra support systems? And so therefore the students that we do have, those students have a higher and greater need. Therefore, we see that need for higher budget per pupil costs.
I completely understand what you're saying. That's not necessarily the case. The attrition is not necessarily attributed to students that are regular education versus special education students. The other thing that I want to clarify is that added level of need does not only get attributed to special education students, right? We know that we have English learners that also have, an added level of need just by virtue of our students living in an urban setting, right? That alone comes with an added level of need, especially given, some of the trauma, whether it's direct, secondary or even tertiary trauma, right? That some of our students experience. And so all of those coupled together means that there's a deeper level of need.
Thank you for that. And so in regards to the budget, in December of last year, we as City Council approved the budget of the 2.7 million. And if I heard correctly, in your budget, you're saying that we're giving the $2.7 million back at the end of this fiscal year. Is that correct?
2.9 has already been allotted to the mitigation. And so the other one the rest still remains. We are actually targeting that for any increases in fringe benefits. We anticipate that folks are going to start, right, going back to seeing their doctors and seeking care.
Okay, so when you were saying mitigated, it wasn't necessarily meaning that we were going to have to give that back, right? We're not giving any money back, right?
I just realized you said 2.7. Maybe you were talking about the excess costs.
Correct, yes.
Okay, so that's a different pot of money, if you will. The excess cost is a grant that actually comes to the city for expenses related to special education students. And we have to anticipate, project the expenses. And if when the state calibrates, they determine that, yes, Hartford Public Schools said they were going to spend $100 million, that is exactly what they billed for. That is exactly the correct amount. And so the city gets that entire amount. If it was more, if it were less, then we have to figure that out.
Thank you. And so in regards to COVID, Majority Leader and Councilman Gill asked a lot of my COVID. The only other two other extra questions in regards to COVID, seeing that these our scholars are coming back and they've been cooped up in the house and stuff like that. Do you see or foreshadow that potentially this summer we can open up field trips for these young folks and getting them out wherever we can, open spaces, as long as we're COVID safe and all that good stuff? Absolutely.
We have our summer programming, actually the bridge program, the program for our rising ninth graders actually has built in their design for them to be off-site on Fridays in field trips, to universities and or to other places. Absolutely.
Fantastic. And then, Doctor, if I would imagine with all these computers that some got broken or were broken, lost, what does a parent, say my child messed up their computer, which is probably very likely when they were younger. Thank God they're older now. But anyway, nonetheless, what happens? How do they just get one back? Is there cost? What's the deal with computers?
Yeah, so first of all, we are so fortunate now to be able to say that we are, for the first time, a one-to-one district, right? Every student has a device, and we're actually moving toward students having two devices, especially for the lower grades. We really don't want our students to have to go back and forth with their device, especially for the little ones. And so if there is anything, whether there is a missed key or the mouse breaks, whatever it is, families call and reach out to our welcome center. We have a team that's available to replenish the device. And so that should not deter anyone from, our students not having access to their learning. So we don't want that to be a barrier at all.
Right. So Doctor, just I've heard from constituents, and I'll follow up with you offline on that folks have been charged $200 if a computer broke or lost or something. So that's not the case, right?
I think it depends on what computer we're talking about. Is it an older student? Are we talking about a Chromebook? Are we talking about the iPad?
Okay, so there's various policies I'm sure there's probably layers to this whole problem.
But we can certainly have a conversation. What I don't want folks is to feel like there's a barrier.
Got it.
to
Got
the
it.
access. Yeah.
So in regards, piggybacking off of Councilman Gale and his access, when I spoke to our colleagues at the state, both in the Senate and our Senate delegation, our two senators and our representative delegation, they really lobbied for the HPS field, is my understanding. And so with that being said, will the community have access to that field as well?
Yes, we're hoping to have the funding to finish it.
Okay.
It is a project that is half done. And I know that, it's back on our hands now at the district. And so we're not sure how we're going to get it done, but whenever it's done, absolutely, we want our community to access.
Absolutely. So, we could definitely, we could talk offline and whatever support you need. I'm sure my colleagues and I will lobby vociferously on your behalf to get that field up and running. So the last thing, yes, just one more question, Majority Leader.
All right.
Yes. So is there anything that we can do better as a council that you would like to see us do better to help support you and your efforts?
That's a great question. One of the things is really with additional outreach and communication to our community. For example, we, have a summer program and we're targeting 10,000 students. We have around 2,000 students that are signed up. And so, the time is ticking. And so to the extent that through your constituencies, helping us at the very least, spread the word and communicate on a more broader scale, that would be a significant help.
Thank you very much. And again, Doctor, thank you for everything that you do.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Councilman LeBron. Councilwoman Bermudez.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Superintendent, for all the work that you do. And again, what other colleagues have said in terms of your tireless efforts to help the community, and especially during this crazy pandemic that we're in. Before I start my questions, I do have a question for Majority Leader. Are we following the 3 question rule, or are we able to ask more questions?
I would like, for the sake of time, because we have a lot of other presenters, and keep in mind that we only with our one department, I would like for us to follow the 3 questions. I can provide leeway of it being 3.5.
Okay, no worries, understand. Okay, so we, thank you for the presentation. We recognize that there's 284 million for this general fund that has been adopted. And of that, it continues to be flat funded, but we are receiving the 98.5 million through the American Care Rescue Plan that you mentioned earlier from the feds. So my questions are more directed towards the American Rescue Plan. Why did they reduce the amount? What was that attributed to, is my first question.
Yeah, that was my question too. And what I was told is that the initial allotment that we were given, they used an old formula. And so that's the reason why. That's one answer that I got. Another answer that I got was that the initial projected allocation to the state turned out to be less from the federal, at the federal level, and because of that, hence, right, all the district got less. So I've got two responses today for that.
Okay, all right. So then my follow-up question to that fund that we're receiving, is it going to be made available to the district starting this upcoming 2021 through 2022 school year? So starting August, starting September, when will that be available?
What we did hear just this week is that some of the funds are going to be made available potentially as early as the end of May. There is also still an application that has to be submitted. We are in a very good place, given that we did, those 50 hours of engagement with our community to help us kind of get ready for the ESSER application. And we are, and essentially we're merging this plan. It becomes one plan. What we did not want to do was to say, oh, we have this extra, pot of money. Let's just figure out how to use it. No, we want to make sure that it is infused in our larger strategies. And so we know that an application is going to be required. This state wasn't sure what the application is going to look like and when that's going to be due.
Thank you. As part of your presentation, you referenced the specific personnel that's dedicated to arts, phys ed, music, etc. Is that also include at the high school level as well?
It does. Yes. Some of the positions that I talked, like the drama, for example, right? Those are more at the high school level. PE, art, music, right? Those are kind of general and across, but dance, drama are more specific at the high school level. And also at the, some magnets have, as you know, specific themes.
Okay, thank you. And my last question really quick, because I know we have a lot of other questions from colleagues, but so the open enrollment period was extended for the lottery and it closed up when again?
Is this for magnets?
For our intra-district.
I'm going to have to get back to you on that one.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you so much, Superintendent. We really appreciate all of what you do on your presentation.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Thank you, Councilwoman Bermudez. Any other questions from my colleagues? All right, seeing none. Madam Superintendent, I have one last question for you. If, let's just say, not making any promises at all, just hypothetical, if you were allocated, the district is allocated an additional $3 million, what could that be put towards?
$3 million. You know what? I'd have to go back and look at what it is that we're going to have to reduce as a result of those 28.5 million that are no longer coming. And right now, the one strategy that we did not finish kind of building out was the teacher pipeline one, because we felt that we might not be able to, start that immediately. And so that's one that we would want to prioritize.
Okay, and if you can do me a favor, get back to me on that. I would like a range from the minimum to the maximum on that teacher pipeline. Okay.
Yeah. The other one would be, the community school piece. This is, as part of these funds, we are actually going to be funding the community schools. Before, that funding was coming from several partners, Hartford Foundation, United Way, the city. And so we decided that since we have for the next 2 to 3 years additional funding, that we were going to fund it. And so that might be, now that these $28.5 million have been reduced, we might have to look at that. So I will get back to you with both of those projections.
Thank you. I would appreciate that. Thank you again for your presentation. We thank you for your leadership, and I echo the sentiments of my colleagues. Please don't hesitate to call upon us for whatever that you need. And thank you for being such a great leader in our school district. We appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. And I just want to extend all of your gratitude actually to our teachers and staff for their significant resilience this year.
Thank you so much. And this is still International Nurses Week, so please send our regards to the nurses. Yes, I got you, Councilman Gale. Yes. Thank you. Have a good one.
Now I'm in trouble because I don't think I've recognized that.
All right, thank you, Madam Superintendent. Next, we have our esteemed treasurer, the Honorable Adam M. Cloud.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, Mr. Treasurer. How are you?
Can you hear me? I don't know what's going on with my video,
We hear you.
but my video isn't working, and that's not good.
You should come on back in.
Guys, the video is not coming on. I don't know why.
That's okay. You can proceed with your presentation, Mr. Treasurer.
Okay, sounds good. My assistant Shay is joining us. So Shay, if you would be so kind as to share your screen.
Sure, just a moment, please. Okay.
Well, good evening, Madam Council President, Mr. Majority Leader, members of Council. So good to see you all. I'm sorry you can't see me. It's been quite a while since we've been together. So I tonight just briefly want to go through fiscal year. I hear something in the background there. Fiscal year 2022 budget for the Treasurer's Office. Shay, if you would be so kind. Just flip to the next page.
One more, Treasurer Cloud?
Can you flip to the next page, please? There we go. So, as most of you know, the treasurer is a no. Okay, that's the right slide.
Oh, okay, this one. No, go back to the first one.
Back again, please.
One more.
Back again, please. And again. There we go. So this is a outline of the Treasurer's Office with our staff. Functionally, we have 15 members of my staff. The Office of the Treasurer is broken up into 3 different departments or divisions. One is the custody of funds. Custody of funds consists of 4 people, and we're principally responsible with our charter mission of being the custodian of city assets. So we principally serve as the banking relationship for all revenues and expenditures in and out of the city. Inside of that office, this is where we pay vendors. This is where we pay out paychecks. This is where pension checks come out of. And when the budget process is concluded, and this year's budget, we don't spend that money on day one. So what we'll do inside of custody of funds is once you all get through with your budget deliberations and the budget is set, we take in those dollars and we invest those dollars on a short-term basis through various banking institutions to generate interest income on those funds until they are drawn upon. On the investment side, what we do is we manage all of the retirement assets of the city, including the defined benefit plan, which is called the Municipal Employees Retirement Fund, or MRF, which is currently valued at about $1.2 billion in assets. We also oversee the management oversight of all of the defined contribution plans for employees. That includes City 457 plan, that includes City 401A plan, that includes the City Board of Education 457 plan, the Board of Education 403B plan. On pension administration, given that there are slightly over 3,000 retirees that receive pension benefits to the tune of about $118 million per year, or approximately just shy of $11 million a month in pension payments. The staff at pension administration really address the concerns of retirees Did they get their check? Is it accurate? We do the calculations when someone considers retirement. So in advance of their retirement, they come and they visit with us, and we'll put an estimate together on what their retirement is. And we do that across the board for the board non-teachers, police, fire, library staff, as well as general city staff. Inside of the pension administration unit, we do have legal counsel that helps us address a number of issues that goes across not just the administration, but also investment. So our legal counsel helps us deal with some of the limited partnership agreements that we have with our asset managers and any contract work we have to do in terms of our custody of funds agreements, our insurance policy that we have with regards to errors and omissions. We also this year are going to be looking into a cybersecurity insurance policy. As you all know, there was a significant cybersecurity attack on the city. We became deeply concerned about that and spent quite a bit of time over the last 12 months working with MHIS, trying to isolate not only what the problem is, but making sure that we have the right coverage in case a hack were to occur to the pension fund. You can imagine with $1.2 billion, the threat of cybersecurity is real. And so we work with our custodial bank, but we're also working with a consultant to help us identify any further risk. And we're going to have our own insurance policy to ensure that if there were something wrong, we would be able to recoup any of that loss. Please to the next page. So in essence, I really went through this slide, but it kind of highlights what the responsibility of the treasurer is. As you can see by those boxes, administration of pension benefits, the deferred compensation plan. We disperse all of our city trust fund dollars. We manage the city's cash. We invest the pension fund. And although we have not entered the capital markets in quite some time since the contract assistance agreement with the state, I, along with the mayor, am the co-issuer of all city debt. Next slide, please. So getting into our budget submission, our budget for this fiscal year, upcoming fiscal year, is $465,316. That actually is a decrease of $22,224, principally due to the fact that we had some change in personnel. And so those that left had a higher salary than those that we hired. And that's a benefit to us. That is consistent year over year with the Treasurer's Office. We have found ways to reduce our budget. We're doing that and really working quite thinly because our mandate under the charter maintains, forces us or needs for us to have a current level of staffing because of the obligations that we have. We will not be able to perform our functions. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, excuse me, if we receive cash, we need to have a segregation of duties. We can't have the same person that takes in the cash be the person that deposits the cash. That is an audit concern around the potential of any threat of fraud or theft. So we have to maintain our levels to keep that segregation of duties within our office so that we are prudently, wisely, and ethically performing our duties. Next slide, please. As you can see on this slide, we're just breaking it out by the various divisions within my office. Custody of funds represents the most, and that's simply because the folks in the custody funds are general fund funded. Many of the other members of my staff, including the pension administration unit, which is 100% funded by the pension fund, not by the general fund. That cost is not there. Our investment management staff and executive office, which consists of myself and my deputy, our salaries by line item are broken down between 3 different pools of assets: general fund, the OPEB trust fund, and the MRF. So in my example, my salary is 85% paid by the pension fund, not by the general fund. Only 5% of my salary is covered by the general fund. We did this going back almost 15, 16 years in the office, in your car. And the benefit of that is it allows us, number one, to make sure that we keep our budget and the taxpayer funded portion of our budget to be as de minimis as possible. We think that this is most appropriate, one, because on the investment side, we have contract employees. We have contract employees on the investment staff, my chief investment officer, my plan administrator, my deputy chief investment officer, and the like. We need to hire professionals, and by doing that, we're able to hire the best and most talented people without it being a burden on the general fund. Next slide, please. Right here just shows you the distinction between the fiscal 21 adopted budget versus our proposed budget in 2022. And as you see, we're showing a 4.6% reduction to our budget. Next slide, please. So I have these accomplishments and some of our strategic initiatives, but I'm going to pause here because this is the stuff that you can certainly read at your leisure. I'd be more open if there are questions. I only want to add one comment though before I pause to say this. One of the things that I have worked on diligently since being elected is taking a much better look at the Hartford Parks Trust Fund. And last year, we distributed nearly $500,000. And you will recall in 2017, when we were considering bankruptcy, the mayor and I had a very important conversation about, should we stop going to the bond market as required under the contract assistance? I agreed with him in that regard, but we had $24 million in the Hartford Parks Trust Fund. That money, which normally we distribute somewhere around $650,000 a year. That's when interest rates were much higher. They're certainly lower today. We wanted to continue to beautify our parks. And since 2017, we've spent nearly $6 million to beautify our parks. That's in collaboration with the Department of Public Works, who designed these things and bid them out. And additionally, we work closely with the finance department to make sure that we don't go over budget with the expenditures. We review all of the expenditures and make sure they're consistent with the ordinance, the Hartford Parks Trust Ordinance and the tree ordinance. This has been a really beneficial thing, I think, because if you have recently spent some time, especially in our last year of COVID, our parks are probably one of our greatest assets in the city. And I've worked and participated in a number of conversations led by the chair of the Park and Rec Committee, Councilwoman Rossetti, on this, which I think was great to be able to have her leadership in this regard, working with the PRAC to help them appreciate what we can and cannot do. We do not have a tremendous amount of money to pay for everything, but what PRAC was established to do is to suggest the ideas that get brought forth to the administration. And with that conversation, we created a budget, and now we're drawing off of those. And as I said, almost $5 million has been expended since 2017. And I think you can see the impact citywide throughout our parks. I'm going to pause there, Mr. Majority Leader and Madam Council President, and ask if there are any questions before I proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Any questions from my council colleagues? Councilwoman Surgeon.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Majority Leader. Treasurer Cloud, thank you for your presentation. I learned more because we did not have a chance last year to actually go through this. So this was very educational for me and very simply presented. So I really understood. So thank you so very much for that. One of the things you are duly elected person in the city of Hartford. You have managed our funds very diligently. So I know you will submit a budget with the same deliberations. So I don't have any budget questions or anything for you because you are duly elected. And so I do have a lot of respect for that. Just one question, simple question though, and not simple question, one ask of you, Treasurer Cloud, is that I know you deposit funds in different banks or credit unions throughout the city or the state. Is that correct?
Yes, that's a short answer. Yes, it's a little bit more complicated, which I'm happy to walk you through. But
I'm
please.
good.
Okay, what is the question?
So no, my question, my ask, sir. One of the things, if you look through majority of the community in North Hartford, we have only have two institutions that the residents can go and bank with. One on
Blue Hills Avenue.
Yes, and one in Main Street North.
Yes.
I'm just asking if whatever you can do with the institution that you bank or city funds, is speaking with them and seeing if there is any way, I don't know how much money you deposit on a weekly or daily basis, but there's something they can do to give back to the community. And we'd love to have another banking institution in North Hartford. So this is a simple ask of you, as you do your duties as a treasurer.
Yes, I appreciate it. And let me respond a little more extensively. Number one, the issue of having banking access throughout the city across every neighborhood is very important to me. I've worked really hard with all of the banks we've had interaction with. Here's the fundamental problem. One, brick and mortar banks are going out of style. And what I mean by that is the capital investment that a bank makes in actually building a bank or renting lease space for a brick and mortar facility, that is not happening as much as it used to. Why? Because so many people, they might open an account at a location, but then they're using their debit card all throughout the state of Connecticut. And so then you've got geography. And banks are predominantly closing nationwide. In my last conversation, which was 3 years ago with Bank of America, they came in, sat with me and said, Mr. Treasurer, we have 5 locations in the city of Hartford, and we're going to have to close some. Across the nation, they closed 187 banks, Bank of America themselves. Hartford lost 2 in that process. One was where the new credit union is going, has been on North Main Street. The other was the Blue Hills branch. And number one, rather than on North Main, rather than them just leaving that building vacant, I worked with them to transfer the ownership of that bank for a very small value over to CENCAP, so that CENCAP could establish itself, so that there was a brick and mortar institution replacing the B of A branch that was there. Because I thought that it was inappropriate to leave that site and leave the community without some place to do their banking. We also argued and fought hard to make sure that they kept the location on Albany Avenue. But the idea of increasing bank locations is going to be very challenging. The industry is moving away from it. And Hartford still has, and memory serves me right, I think B of A locations in Hartford, there are still at least 4 within the city of Hartford. So I hope that is somewhat responsive to your question. I don't know if I can convince them to do something more, but it's just the way of the world.
Believe me, I do a lot of my banking also electronically, but we do have a digital divide in our city. So, you know, I know brick and mortar buildings are kind of dying out, but we also, you know, I don't know how much money you deposit in these banks on a regular basis. I'm not sure if it's, I don't know what the institutions you use, you know, but whatever you can do to encourage, I thank you for with the information sharing regarding the credit union on Main Street North, because then there will be no banking institution in that part of the city at all. So that was a blessing. So thank you very much for that. But whatever you can do to encourage maybe another credit union, you know, that further, you know, goes into North Hartford, that would be a huge help. Because, you know, as you know, Treasurer Cloud, you know, we have a, in our city, not everyone has a car to get around. So most people, you know, get around from public transportation. So, you know, having an institution, you know, walking in the neighborhood is an asset to our community, especially one which is recovering from the pandemic and also trying to catch up on the digital divide. And again, thank you so very much for your presentation. And I appreciate any help you can, you know, do in that area.
I will keep you informed on that. I hear you loud and clear. When I talk about banks, I'm talking about our primary bank, B of A. That does not preclude, and I am engaged in some conversations. There's been a lot of mergers recently. And so some of the flag names that we know are changing. And so as a result of that, there's an opportunity there to engage them. You know, so do not think that I'm having those conversations. So as an example, right, like People's got purchased, I'm having that conversation about whether they're willing to make a commitment to have a brick and mortar. But as soon as I make a breakthrough there, I'm happy to share that.
I appreciate any help, sir. Thank you so very much again for your presentation tonight.
My pleasure.
Mr. Treasurer, thank you for your presentation. I have a question regarding, you know, we saw news by State Treasurer Wooden regarding looking to diversify the state's funds with investment banks and brokers who are who represent who are more Black and brown of a representation. Any plans within your department to follow the same suit regarding the investment of our dollars into more of the individuals that are of Black and Latino descent?
Yes, well, Mr. Majority Leader, thank you so much for raising that issue. This is this issue of what we in the industry are calling DE&I, diversity, inclusion, and equity, is critically important to me. And I don't know how else to say this, but listen, I'm a man of color. I've been a man of color since the day I was born and the day I die. And I, in an early age in my life, was at the C-suite level at an early age in a very historically majority firm, the only man of color to ever reach the level of managing director in the firm history. This is in my blood to fight for equity and inclusion. And so, yes, I'm very aware of what other state treasurers are doing and others that are engaged in this, but a lot of their discussions are around the idea of, you know, how will they vote their proxies, meaning their shares, at annual board meetings, or some want to, you know, write policy that says that they want to see board diversity. I've taken a different approach. In December of 2020, I released a press statement called the City of Hartford MRF Diversity Report Card. And that diversity report card, think of it like you were in school. You're going to get an A to an F rating. And what we've done is we've sent it to every asset manager that does business with us. And it will also apply to any asset manager who wishes to do business with us. We ask them to provide their federal EEOC, Equal Opportunity Commission report. So any firm that has employees over 100, they have to file with the federal government this report on diversity. It breaks down by diversity, gender, and race, their employees. What we do is we take that report along with a requirement to have them submit in writing annually and then review with us during their annual meeting with the Pension Commission. We walk through their EEO report, and I can tell you it's very disappointing to see the numbers. You know, you'll see a firm that has, 150 people, one African-American, maybe one Latino. They may have 7 or 8 women. They may have 11 to 10 Asian Americans broken between male and female, but ultimately it's usually in the 70% majority. And so I want to do something about this. And so what I decided was, rather than worrying about whether the board was diverse, which I still care about, or whether we vote in a particular way to try and change their policy, I'm saying, you give us this report. If I do not see any change within 12 months, we're going to put you on watch, which means we will threaten to terminate our relationship with you if we don't see progress. And I view that to be a little bit more forceful, in that what I'm saying is the only way you really make change is if you hit people where it hurts, in their wallet. And these firms who manage multiple billions of dollars, who are a majority and have paid no attention to diversity and inclusion, cannot continue to operate in this manner. And so if they don't want to buy into inclusion and recruitment and retention of people of color and women, and if they're not interested in having a plan for those women and minorities once they hire them, and then bring them up through the ranks so that they can become managing directors or partners in these firms, that's not who we wish to do business with. And the way I lead into the conversation with these managers is, the city of Hartford is a completely diverse city in which the majority of our population, our retirees, are diverse in their nature. And so the people that we want managing our money should be reflecting that diversity. And let me add one last point on that, Mr. Majority Leader. What has come out of the conversations thus far has been positive. There's nobody right now that's got an A, unless they are minority owned. We have, of our $1.2 million and $1.2 billion, 25% of our managers are women and minority owned firms. That may be one of the highest in the nation in terms of the percentage of managers that manage assets given our size. And we're proud of that. But to take it to the next level, tomorrow morning, in fact, I am having a call with the president of Howard University, Dr. Wayne Fredericks, because I offered to Dr. Fredericks that I'm going to convene a call with all of my publicly traded asset managers to have them on a call with him to introduce Howard University to them, many of whom they don't even know that Howard exists. And for that matter, Hampton and Florida A&M are the other two that I'm focused on.
No
And
Virginia State?
I'm happy to include Virginia State. And the issue for me is this: I want them to hear from the president of the university that there are accomplished students and graduates who have never had the opportunity to work for firms like this. They've never recruited on Howard's campus or Hampton's or any other campus of HBCUs. So the resounding fact is that of my 18 publicly traded managers, right now, we just started this a week ago, but 9 of them have said yes. So we're going to hold a meeting, and my hope is that we're going to get internships and permanent placement coming out of historically Black colleges. And if anyone wants to further ask that question, I'm also promoting this notion within my managers to take an opportunity to invest if they have foundations right inside of Hartford, because I want to have a streamline where there are people of color that reside in this city that can have access to opportunity and work on Wall Street. And so in partnership a year ago with Voya, I created a partnership with the Children's Museum, which is out in West Hartford, and we're working to bring it into Hartford home where it used to be 97 years ago. I've talked with the administration. I could really use the council's help on this because they want to move back into Hartford. And what we did with Voya was Voya gave us $100,000 to partner and find 4 other organizations: the Children's Museum, the Y, Hartford Youth Scholars, Hartford Parent University, and the Legacy Foundation. And what we're trying to accomplish there is create a STEM-related curriculum to take children from grade 1 all the way through high school, so that at every aspect of their life, they're being introduced to STEM-related curriculum, which would advance them to become the students that we want to see that come out of Hartford, go to college, and want to come back and perhaps have a chance to work at People's Bank, to work at B of A, perhaps work at one of the asset managers that we do business. I am singularly focused on this issue because Hartford has very talented people. After listening to Dr. Rodriguez, I'm more excited about the opportunity that young people in Hartford should have a chance to get into the middle class and not just be in the place that maybe they were never made aware that the world of finance existed. Like me, I didn't know that Wall Street existed until I went off to college. My point is, Hartford children deserve better. And if I can help provide an opportunity for them to land, and let me be clear, in the last 10 years, I've had, I think, 10 or 11 interns that are Hartford students and Hartford residents that now have graduated. Some have gone off to law school. They call me and let me know that they've gone off to Wall Street. I couldn't be more proud about that, but I'm dug in on this issue. Sorry for being long-winded there, Mr. Majority Leader, but it
Not
is.
a problem at all, sir. I understand how passionate you are about that, and I thank you for showing your passion, and thank you for your explanation on that. I think that Councilwoman Rossetti has a question.
Yeah, and I'll be quick, but first of all, thank you, Treasurer, and thank you. You may have been long-winded, and I don't think you were. I think it was just informative, passionate, and I really am thrilled to hear what you've said. But I really want to continue on what you said and really thank you for being the guardian of the Park Trust Fund. If anything has showed us in the last year how much open space is needed for our city, our children, our families, and I'm really excited to continue our, relationship, our conversations, and the excitement around that. So I just wanted to thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. And I really enjoyed working with you on that. And let's continue to do that. I think we can really make a change, Councilman, together. I think with a focused approach, I think we can really target some things and continue to enhance and beautify this city.
Absolutely. Thanks, Treasurer.
Thank you. Mr. Treasurer, I know Councilman Gill has a question. Were you finished with the rest of your presentation?
Yeah, I'm all set.
Oh, okay. All right. Councilman Gill.
Thank you, Mr. Majority Leader, and thank you, Mr. Treasurer. It's always a pleasure. A couple of questions I have for you on the MRF and OPEB funded FTEs in your budget. We have the budget book. I assume you have the same book, and this sets out that this year it appears there will be just shy of 13 FTEs, 13 employees that will be funded from the MRF and the OPEB, and that's an increase of about 1 over last year. First question is, since we also know that every employee costs the city about 65% additional in benefits, and the benefits are usually in a separate line item, is that true for your budget? Are these employees, are their benefits included in the other parts of our budget under health and insurances, et cetera?
Yes, they would be.
Second question, thank you. Second question is, I don't seem to see it, but the question is whether it's somewhere in this budget book. Is there a dollar number for the total amount of funding from the MRF and the OPEB that's covering these 12.95 FTEs? Is that somewhere in this budget book for me to find? And if not, is it a number you can provide to us?
Yeah, I have to get back to you. You're looking for the funded amount from where?
From my understanding is that you are paying, that the Treasurer's Office is paying for 13 employees out of the MRF. What I don't know is whether those 13 employees are costing you $1 million or $2 million or 1.5 million. I'm just wondering, I don't see the number in our budget book. I don't see it in the.
You wouldn't, Council. You wouldn't, because remember, you're dealing with general fund expenditures. The expenditures relative to the salaries is contained within the pension budget.
No, I understand. So I'm just asking if the number, if it's not in the book, is it a number you can provide?
Yes. Well, yes, that's a number I can provide. In fact, it is of public record in our approved pension commission budget that is posted on my website.
Thank you. I have one more question for you. You generally in past years have talked to us about your return on investments, and I'm imagining that this is a pretty rosy year. So I'm just wondering what you can say about how well we've done over the last 12 months.
Better than most. We're up. I don't have that number in front of me, but if memory serves me, we're up almost 18+% this year.
And compared to other municipalities in the state, you feel we're doing better than most?
Well, yes, I would think so.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from my council colleagues? Seeing none. Mr. Treasurer, it's always a pleasure, sir. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for your leadership. And thank you for going through this exercise once again. And give our regards to your assistant treasurer and your staff on continuing to keep our pension fund strong. And have a good evening.
Thank you all so much. Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving right along. We are on a good pace of time. We're going to now have a presentation by our town and city clerk, Mr. Noel McGregor Jr. Oh, Mr. Clerk, can't hear you. No, can't hear you now. Can't hear you.
Yes, you hear me now?
We hear you now. Yes, sir.
Okay, I usually use these for council meeting, and I decided to not to tonight. So I should have stuck with what has been working so far.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you for this opportunity to come before you to present the budget for the town clerk and vital records office. As you know, our mission is to the official record keeper for the city of Hartford and responsible for the recordings and maintaining and clarifying land records. I don't see, are you seeing our presentation?
No, it's not shared.
I think Kim and V were supposed to do it, but I can see if I can do it. Hold on one second.
I'm happy to share if you need me to.
Yeah, could you please, Lisa? I think that's Lisa.
It's Jen. Just
It's Jen.
sorry. Yeah,
All right,
sorry.
sorry,
One
Jen.
second. No worries. No worries.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, shoot. One moment. Okay, can you see it?
Yes,
Yes.
we can.
All right.
Okay.
All right, sir.
Go ahead, Mr. Clerk.
All right, so the town clerk is the official record keeper for the city of Hartford, responsible for maintaining and certifying land records, including deeds, mortgages, liens, maps, and any other related documents. Vital statistics, where we record births, marriage, civic, and death certificates, and the secretary for the city council, and we keep our minutes, the agendas of boards and commission, and other town records to ensure transparency of council agendas and to enhance civic engagement. The town clerk's office is one of neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all, with an emphasis on providing information according to applicable state and local laws accurately, efficiently, and cost effectively in a timely and courteous manner. Our organizational chart, as you have before you, the town clerk, we have a principal administrative analysis who handles council duties plus other office duties. We have assistant town clerk / project manager. That is a hybrid position that was recently added to the portfolio of Mr. Eric Lusa, recognizing all that he's done and is willing to do as we usher in new projects. And we have in our vital records another principal administrative analysis. And then, of course, we have the senior administrative assistants, our record census administrative clerk, and we had added to this year budget another administrative clerk, which is sorely needed as we are severely understaffed, and we can definitely use the position. And we have the 3 assistant registers in the vital statistic office. So some of our highlights for 2021 were to the staff development through training and certification. When I was interviewing to become the town clerk, I mentioned that I would be taking the classes for certification as to officially have the certification from various town clerk associations. Myself and Mr. Lusa have taken 3 classes so far, I believe, maybe 2 It's been a long haul, but we are on the process. It's a 2.5-year process to get the certification, and there's 3 different certifications. So we've been active in the Town Clerk Association, recently attending the spring conference where we received various information on the changes to the town clerk statistics and vital statistics offices. We also secured in the Civic Engagement Grant in collaboration with the ROV, as we have come before you, the different various committee meetings to explain about the grant, the Civic Engagement. It's actually was a twofold: secure and safe elections and civic engagement. And we are utilizing the grant to upgrade the City of Hartford voter system, a system that had not been upgraded in almost 20 years. We utilize a grant to run safe absentee ballot process. I'd like to just say during the height of COVID-19, we were able to keep all of our staff at Vital Records and in Town Clerk, and the 15 temporary workers that were processing absentee ballot and in-house voting safe and secure during the whole process. And it's thanks to the grant enabled us to purchase extra safety equipment. We also utilize a grant to purchase a council management software, iCompass, to improve our council agenda and meetings and our boards and commission, and also to help enhance transparency of public meetings. We are in the process now of having that software installed, and we're very excited about it. It really is going to be a blessing that we will be able to share with a click of a button all of our public meetings with the community. One of the things that I have heard over and over again is transparency. Well, this will help us to be completely transparent in all that we do. And it will help us to upgrade the boards and commission, which again, when I came before you, I pointed out how much it needed to be improved and how old school it was as far as how the book was being maintained and kept. And we're putting that online now, and we hope to have that after we get the council management piece in to go to the next phase, which would be the boards and commission. And of course, last year we managed an exceedingly high absentee ballot voter turnout. Close to 12,000 people voted by absentee ballot. During that process, we had a large walk-in. People were coming in to cast their ballots, and we set up an actual polling place really here in City Hall where they came in and voted on a daily basis. We also had the drop box. We were able to get additional boxes. We were first allocated 2 ballot boxes from the state, and we were able to secure 3 additional ones so that all of our neighborhoods, well, not all of them, but strategically they were placed throughout the city to enhance the voters' access to dropping off their ballots without having to worry about the problems that we were having with the Postal Service in their slow delivery. And then we continue to convert our permanent records to digital images for the preservation and the instantaneous retrieval of records. That's through a grant through the state library. And they have a woman who comes in, and she's here now going through the old records that we have up on the 4th floor and digitizing them. And also I want to add on that is that this has been a yearly function that she comes in and she works for a while. The grant has been approximately $10,000 each year. So our strategic initiative is to look, our office is looked upon as the face of City Hall. I like to say we're like the Swiss Army knife here. Every type of thing comes through us. When people can't find something, they're here at the city town clerk's office. And And so we need to develop a social media platform to improve the flow of information between City Hall and the community, and to better inform all our sectors of our community on a daily basis. The initiative also, as I spoke on earlier, is to complete the installation of the council management software, which we will be having some training sessions for the users, the power users. This means the mayor's office and the city council staff coming up later this month. And we'll continue that process of getting that up and running. We hope to have that launched by August, and it's on track for that. And that would also be easy to link everything that we do from the council standpoint and from ordinances and resolution and meetings right to the clerk's webpage and anywhere else in the city's webpage. We're looking to improve our services by offering more services online. We're looking to have our documents converted to fillable forms so people can fill them out online and submit them, and to have it easier that they can request the services. We have some things that are, of course, are governed by state statutes over in the register, the vital records, and we're looking at how we can better complete that process so that people will have access. And we want to review our fee structures. There's certain things, certain fees that are determined by state statutes, state laws, but there's a few fees or ways that we can generate a little bit of revenue to increase our revenue and to more efficiently use our resources by streamlining all our processes through technology. In our vital records, we want to improve delivery. I just spoke on that a little bit, but the services to the community. What COVID-19 has shown us is that we really need to have a more online presence and system. So we're working with IQS, which is one of our vendors, and if they can't do it, we'll find a vendor that can do it, and to really enhance and expand that. We want to also expand our third-party vendor access to citizens by upgrading our webpage access, as I said, with fillable forms and the technology upgrade, so that we reduce redundancy in the issuing of vital records and improve accounting and the archiving of the system. So our budget highlights, as you see, there is a 6.2 change in the budget from last year. That reflects the added position as administrative clerk and the upgrading of Mr. Lusa from a assistant town clerk to project manager. Everything remains pretty much the same. The grant there is the library grant for $9,500. That has been unchanged for years. We did not have in here the Civic Engagement Safe Voting Grant. It's a one-time grant, but one of the things I like to say on that grant is that we are looking to possibly develop a long-term relationship with the organization administering the grant. The grant is by Facebook, and it was for, as I said earlier, it was 2 grants really. Each of the grants was the same amount of $346 and some change, and that's where we got the $694,000 grant. So with that, are there any questions? Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot this page. Sorry. Okay, this is a highlight area. You know, this is what we provide on a regular basis: clerical staffing and support, service for Court of Common Counsel. We maintain records of all the boards and commission, maintain and prepare Court of Common Counsel minutes, agendas, aircraft registration. A lot of people don't realize that the town clerk is the official aircraft register. We administer oath of offices throughout the city, police department, notaries and so forth, which is also on this list. Issuing of dog licenses. I know Councilman Gale. We were working last year on the online presence for dog registration. We're in the process. Our vendor said that should be a go by June 1st. And we're setting up an email. Mr. Lusa, please speak on that.
Yeah, so ultimately individuals throughout the city will be able to submit their rabies certificate online, and everything will be sent in. We'll keep an electronic copy of it, and they will get their dog tag back in the mail with paper form if there's any issues.
Yeah, and that's done through one of the vendors that we already have, IQS. We record military discharges, the DD-214s. People keep them on file so that they will get the military discount on their taxes. And of course, notary services, justice of the peace, and municipal campaign finance records are kept here. We perform a variety of election-related duties, including the issuance of absentee ballots and the preparation of state election reports. We ensure compliance with freedom of information, but we have a new system, which is, it used to all come through here. Most of it come through here and we would farm it out. Now we have the new online system, which has been very helpful. Mr. Lusa handles that for the office. And the system is working where it doesn't all come here and go out. They can file their Freedom of Information Act online. Then, of course, we issue applicable certificates and permits, births, marriage, deaths, so forth, domestic partnership. And I will speak on domestic partnership. We may be the only city in the state that issued domestic partnerships. There's not a lot of them being done, but about 60 or so, 30 to 60 a year. I don't have the exact number, but people have come from all over the state, especially when COVID hit and people wanted to make sure that their significant other was able to be on their insurance. They were coming up during the height of COVID-19 to receive their domestic partnerships. And of course, the burial, liquor permits, and trade names are also done by our office. And of course, we sell the sporting license. It says hunting and fishing, but most of the folks in the city are just fishermen or fisherwomen. We don't really do much in the line of the hunting. And of course, the notary public service. Thank you for this time to present our 2022 budget to you.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk, and want to say a heartfelt thank you to yourself and your staff of managing through COVID-19 at the height of the pandemic. Unforeseen time, times, and I know it was not in your job description to deal with COVID a week after you got appointed as the town and city clerk, and also to kudos to you yourself and your team on making sure that we had a safe and fair election process, especially for the absentee ballot process. It was quite an undertaking, I know, and you all pulled it off seamlessly, and you protected your staff to not put them in the harm's way as frontline workers. And so I just want to also ask about as far as civic engagement, and since we are transitioning to more of an online platform, and Eric, thank you for finding that that grant, much appreciated. Is there other opportunities to find other grants like that so that we can do more for our community, keep our community updated and involved as to what's going on?
I believe there are a lot of opportunities out there. One of the impediments to us seeking more is the staffing level. It's just so hard to devote the time needed to search out these grant opportunities. There's one thing that I failed to really expound upon, is that with the Civic Engagement grant, we are working with the Hartford Public Library as our vendor, and we want to do a promotional program. and we thought about using digital sources to educate our people on the importance of voting. And one of the areas that we looked upon really was to network with the library. They have over half, I forgot how many, 800,000 visitors, whatever, a year, to have a presence in the library. So we're working with them. We had a tour of their digital, their digital lab, and it is really outstanding, world-class digital system over there, and they can do a lot stuff. So we're working with them, partner. We hope to have that in place. We are in, I was told that the RFP or whatever, the agreement has been finalized, and that I'm not moving enough for me. Turn on my light, make sure I'm still alive. So we're looking forward to that partnership also. But as I said, we're plugging a lot of holes. We're doing a lot, and we would love to be able to find some more grants, because it can only help in that area of civic engagement. One of the things that I say that's important, that the citizens should know the importance of our boards and commission, because a lot of our policies come from our boards and commission. The recommendations come from all of their hard work and study. So if we can enhance that component and get more people involved, we will have a greater turnout and participation of our citizens.
Thank you for the explanation. Also, too, I just want to take a point of personal privilege, not just to thank Mr. Lusa for his work in the Office of Helping the Council and the office run, but also to Mr. Lazou, the other administrative arm that works directly with Council. Would like to see any, if you do pursue any other grants and to help out with that function of the offices as well, so we all can be more efficient in our due diligence of serving the public. We do appreciate all of your work. Councilwoman Bermudez, you have a question?
Thank you. I do have a question. I have two questions. Thank you, Mr. McGregor, for your presentation, and thank you for your efforts throughout just helping our community and the hard work that you do, that all of you do in the office. My question is, first, going back to the boards and commissions. I know I recently got a request for someone from Permanent Status Commission on Women. I'm just using this as an example. And they were looking for meeting minutes. What is the time frame that that information will become digitized? That it'll all be electronic now? What was that time frame again?
Okay, I'm going to ask Mr. Lazou to chime in on that. He's here in the office also. If you can unmute yourself and but from the iCompass piece of software, we're going to install the council management piece first. And once we get that in, then we'll work on the boards and commission. But we have been working diligently to upgrade even the present system that we have. And I think that one of the things that I had requested that Mr. Lazou does is to highlight the terms, because so many of the terms have been expired, and our appointing authorities, the mayor's office, for most of them, need to know when these positions have expired. And then there was some confusion as to when the term begins and when the term ends. Some of them had a carte blanche date for, one set date for everyone to expire, but the state statutes or the city ordinance didn't state that. So we're trying to clean up a lot of those little things in it. But Sixto, you can unmute yourself and talk to answer that.
Yes, Councilwoman Bermudez. Reports follow FOI. So even though we are in the process of getting it digital, we do have hard copies that are sent down. They need to submit them within 48 hours or at least have them available. So basically, we're working towards that. And once we have this new program, it will be more accurate as to the names, the party, and the terms.
Just to add a little clarity to that, these submissions ideally would be submitted online through the office, and then once that's done, they'll be published. So say you enjoy the minutes from Permanent Women's Commission, you could subscribe to that particular minutes, and once that hits our office, those emails and those minutes will automatically go out to everybody. So if it's an agenda, that will automatically go out. If it's minutes, that will automatically go out. So it will be online, and then they could subscribe to, weekly or monthly emails from the office.
Yeah, just to add on, with the iCompass, the way that it's done now is that each of the committees have their own distribution lists. With iCompass, they'll be able to subscribe to those commissions that they want to receive the information from, and you can unsubscribe from a particular board or commission or the council minutes. So it'll be a button, it'll be on there or a place on there where a person can go to. If someone wants to say, I want to get the council agendas, I want to get the council meeting minutes, then they can go on and subscribe. We don't have to keep these and update these lists. It's kind of, we get a list, we can put an email in there and it's in there. And if the person doesn't tell us to remove them, it's still there. I noticed that some former city employees, their work email is still there. So this way it will be able to move them and they can subscribe, unsubscribe themselves.
Thank you. I appreciate that. This is my.
Hey, how you doing? Hi, I saw you the other day.
My other question, so would it be safe to say like sometime this fall that would be digitized? Would that be
yes, we're looking for an August launch for the council management, maybe even a pre-launch in July. So we're close to that. And then once that is up and running, then the next phase would be the boards and commission. And one of the things that we'll be able to do is, we have, I believe, like 39 boards and commission. And then we have various staff people who are administering the boards and commission. And so you have various forms. So with the iCompass, we'll have one form. It'll be the same for everyone. They'll be able to go in and plug and play, put their information in, put their minutes in, boom, publish, and it hits the website.
Yeah, and just to recap quickly, this was at no cost to the city whatsoever. 3-year contract at $75,000, $25,000 a year, no cost to the city. So this transparency misconception that we continuously hear should be addressed, hopefully by the fall.
We appreciate that effort because that's awesome. That's it's always a plus. The last question that I had was in reference to personnel. You all do a lot of work with a very small personnel. Like, you probably should be having twice the amount of employees with all the requests that you get. And so in a hypothetical, since we are looking at the budget, what would, if you could have an additional X amount of staffers, how many would that be? And how much hypothetically would you need?
To answer that question, entry level is those are the positions that are being filled in this budget, one position. We would like to be able to bring someone in, especially in the social media area, which would be probably a little bit higher budget item. To say how many, I would say 2 more here and 1 more in Vital, 3 to 4, I think would help us to really do all the things we have to do and upgrade. And then the thing that we're looking at, remember the state legislator is changing the absentee ballot process. And that's going to create a bigger strain on our office because it'll be much easier. We had to hire 15 temps to produce last year to cover the election. We hired some for the primary. Then we had an unexpected dump on us and we had to hire some more. And then when the general election, we had to hire some more. So it was a total of about 15 temp workers. We would probably always need to hire temp workers to supplement it. But if we had people, more staff, we would have less temps and it would be more professional. We can just roll it out better. I just want to say that, you know, we had a good team working on it. That was led by Mr. Lusa and Mr. Soto, who trained all the temp workers and made sure that they knew how to do the process. And we had a very successful process. So that would be my wish list.
And as part of the last follow-up question to that one, if we had, you know, like the wish list 2 directly in the town clerk, 3 for vital records. So if it, what is the price range that we're looking at? Would you, for the wish list, are we talking about like 400,000? Are we talking about 300,000? Just that we have, hold on, baby, just so that I have a better understanding.
I mean, I think we can get back to you on that one in particular, but you know, I think some of this might be easier. I mean, we do make the city $2 million a year. So, you know, I think we can offset some of those costs. I mean, granted, they do go to the general fund, but between that and grants, I think we could, you know, talk offline further about stuff like that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. We appreciate all that you do. You guys rock, and we really appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Gill.
Thank you, Mr. Majority Leader, and thank you, Mr. Town Clerk, and Eric and Sixto, everybody. You know, second everything that's been said. I just want to reference the campaign finance filings. You know, another obligation of your office that you performed admirably on in 2019, and I know this year we have a Board of Education election coming up. So look forward to seeing. I don't know how many candidates we're going to have, but I look forward to seeing whatever campaign reports people file getting posted on your website, and maybe at some point that can be folded into some improved technology. So kudos to you and keep it up, and we're here to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councilman Gale, I'm glad you touched on that. It just came to my attention, of course, with the charter revision that we need to have that online also. So there's a lot of documents that need to be online so that people can access them easily. The old system was you come into the office, we sit you at a table and you go through it and it didn't leave the office. And we had to do that just yesterday, I believe. So that is an area that we are looking at improving and making sure that happens. I think the partnership with the library would be very key in that.
Councilman, you all set? Okay. Councilwoman Surgeon.
Thank you, Mr. Majority Leader. Thank you, Mr. Town Clerk, and thank you, your staff. First, I want to just give you guys kudos for last year. I know how diligently you and your staff, Eric and Sixto, work and try to get over 12,000 absentee ballot mailed out. So that was a feat in itself. So I want to thank you guys so very much for that. Most of my questions were answered by previous council member. You know, one of the things I do want to echo, Councilwoman Bermudez, you know, you guys have a revenue of about $2.4 million revenue that you, looking at the budget book, that you collect every year. I saw that in your strategic, one of the things in your strategic plan is basically taking a look at your fee structure. You know, it would be interesting to see what that looks like, you know, in the coming fiscal year. And basically you only have, you know, well, you got an extra staff this year, 11 staff with a budget of, over 800,000, and you bring in revenue of $2.4 million. I certainly agree with Councilwoman Bermudez, where your office is overextended more than anything else. And it would be behoove us that you're providing these critical services to our constituents in the city, and that you probably need a little bit more staff, I would think, to try to get so many things done. I mean, so many people born. We have 2 major hospitals in the city. We have so much birth. We have so many marriage license, so much death certificate. So it's a lot that your department is handling. I also have to commend Councilman Gale, because looking at the campaign financing structure certainly need to be so I would love to see if you would also include that in a digital upgrade. Looking at the state system, and maybe borrowing something from the state system we file for the local election will come in handy. So that's since I've got most of my question answered from the previous council member, I just want to thank you, Mr. Lusa, for your ingenious idea of looking for grants out there that has really made a difference in your department. I want to thank Sixto for his patience. We came in last year as new council, within 3 months, the pandemic happened. And, Sixto, Mr. Lazu has been wonderful in getting back to us, and getting us our agenda ready. So I want to thank you, Mr. Town Clerk, and your wonderful staff in the service they provided both to the constituents in the city and to us council member. Keep up the good work, and whatever we can do, to help your department improve, please let us know.
Thank you. Can I just say this to the other council members who may not know that we were in a technology bind with the election coming up. The absentee ballots were going out, and we had a lot of technical problems. Our technology department was overwhelmed with the school. We had problems with the computers, getting them to speak with the state. And Councilwoman Surgeon, in her day job, extended the office of the Secretary of State, that we were this close to moving our whole operation over there. And it took us efforts by Eric Lusa, who took over the technology, because we didn't have the support here, and setting up those computers with our label printers and everything. We were having a lot of problems, and we got it solved in the nick of time, and we had it up and humming. And even the Secretary of State commended us on the operation that we were doing here. They happened to have a press conference around the grant and other things, and that she was here, and I think it helped persuade her in her support of the early voting in the absentee ballot, because she saw the lines that were here where people were voting at the time. So kudos also to you, Councilwoman, for what you did to help us get that system up and running, that we're able to talk to your technology people, that our technology people couldn't get us through, and they walked us through it, and we were able to take care of that and run this election, because it would have been a disaster. I'm telling you, a disaster without it.
You guys are welcome. You, as Councilwoman Bermuda says, you guys rock. Mr. Lusa basically accommodate. He actually, in the middle of the day or evening, whatever we need to work with. So, I'm prejudiced. What can I say? This is my hometown. I want to make sure we look good. So, you guys were quite welcome. Anything to help.
Thank you. And thank all the council people for your support.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Thank you, Eric. Sixto, Councilwoman Surgeon, thank you for your help because that was an untold story. So I'm glad that we were able to seek assistance from your daytime capacity to help us out. I really do appreciate that. I have a quick question before we conclude. Understanding that a lot of the we get $2 million in revenue from that comes out the town and city clerk's office, and understanding that a lot of it is tied to state statute. What is it within your budget, the city's policy, that is not tied to state statute that we could look at on trying to change the policy to increase revenue?
Well, most of it is the domestic partnership, notary fees, a few other things. We have to get to you offline with all of those other items. But one of the things that we're looking at is, there go my light again. One of the things that we're looking at is the vendors that we are using. Is there a potential for income within the processes that we have, and the possibility of bringing some of those processes in-house if we have the technology to do it, which would help to increase revenues. And we looked at possibly also, in the process of earning more revenue, possibly saving the citizens on the processing fees, because I feel some of the processing fees might be a little bit exorbitant.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at a reorganization of specifically the Vital Records Office, and we're hoping that through vendors that, one, we can save the residents some money, and two, create an additional revenue stream, which can offset some of these additional positions.
That's great. I look forward to that. And please, if you have any additional information as to how we could, whether it's regarding ordinance or whatever, how we can introduce that to increase those fees in the same time as under the reorg, please, let's do that. Councilman Sanchez, did you have anything?
Yes, I do. Thank you. And through you, Majority Leader. So, Mr. Clerk, Eric, Sixto, and the team, I echo the sentiment of my colleague. You guys did a tremendous job, especially through COVID and the situation that we faced. And continue doing the great work that you do. So my quick question is this: of your budget, what's the percentage of it that we receive from registering the pets, licensing, and especially registering the aircrafts from the Brandon Airport? Okay,
I have some figures on that, but all of it we would have to get back to you on. Just off the top, the dog licenses is a very small fee. Most of it goes to the state. The aircraft registration, we brought in so far to date $8,700. A domestic partnership, $1,800. Notaries, $5,400. Most of it comes from our conveyance. We just had a big transaction. It was about $48,000 today, Eric. One transaction.
A majority of our revenue is from real estate transfers, and depending on the housing market, real estate market, we're in a particularly good real estate market currently, even in Hartford and Hartford County. And we've seen, I think our budget for this fiscal year was $1.6 million going back to the general fund. I believe we've just crossed the $2 million threshold. Yeah, so, the dog licenses, the aircraft registration, all low-hanging fruit. I mean, just looking at Brainerd Airport, there's the only tax money we get from them is the airplane registration, which is, peanuts compared to the size of that land. But, that being said, unfortunately, a lot of the stuff is driven by state statute, that's why we're trying to look at, under a reorg, some additional revenue streams with the Vital Records Division, which would in turn would save the citizens some money as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and I was, I'm pretty surprised that the low revenue that we received from the Brandon Airport was approximately acres, and you have a handful of aircraft, but I would think that we would get some kind of other types of revenue from that area. But thank you for answering the question, and also thank you for your support and your service to the community.
Okay, just to follow up a little bit on that, Councilman, to give you a bigger picture. So far for this year, we took in through here $5.1 million. Of that, 2 million stayed here. So 3 million is passing through the state.
Okay.
That's just this side. That's not the vital records side. That's just the town clerk. So we are, money's coming through here. It's just not staying. And I think that would be a legislative issue. As I myself and Councilman Gale had the conversation last year on the dog license, and I think it's a lost leader. I think we lose money on the dog license. How much we get per license, Eric? $1?
Probably it's less than that with the expenses. It's probably
with
like,
expenses, yeah.
So just a quick question. I'm sorry. I just want to extend this real quick. So we get $1. What does it cost us to process a license for a dog?
The tags, the postage, the envelopes, staffing, it's a loss.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Duly noted.
Thank you, Councilman Sanchez. Any other questions from my council colleagues before we let Mr. Clerk and the rest of the staff go? Saying none, Mr. Clerk, Eric, and Sixto, thank you all very much for your service. We do appreciate your efforts and your support, and continue on leading, and have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. All right, moving right along. We are not getting any breaks because we are at the last leg of our evening, and we have next up our esteemed colleague, last but not least, the Honorable Giselle Feliciano. Long time no see.
Long time no see. How's everybody?
Doing wonderful. She is our Democratic Registrar of Voters, who is representing the Registrar of Voters office. And Madam Registrar, we are in your hands.
Thank you. Also joining us is our Republican registrar, as I see on the screen. I hope she's there. Let me just get the shared point. Give me one quick second here. Nope. I practiced this earlier so I can get it. Jennifer, are you on?
I am. I can get it pulled up for you. One moment.
Please, it's not coming up for me for whatever reason. I apologize for that.
No worries. Here you go.
No worries at all.
Thank you. So basically, it's the same as pretty much always. First of all, thank you. As we all have talked, the Department of Town Clerks has talked before me. We've had a heavy year last year with the pandemic and still moving forward, but here we go. So our mission is to serve the needs of the voting public in the municipality in which we are elected, governed by federal, state, local, and municipal ordinance to ensure the voting rights of Hartford citizens are protected and exercised under the election laws. The administration continues to work closely with the Secretary of State to develop the best methods and procedures of administrating all elections. Last election was a great example of everyone coming together and bringing everything to flourish an election and making it possible. We're bound to uphold and the integrity of the office and to do the job to our best of our abilities under the general state statutes. Go ahead. As you see, our organizational chart, myself, the Democratic Registrar, we are also Secretary of State, the Republican Registrar, Vanessa Garay Jackson, my deputy, Ms. Kathy Brooks, Executive Assistant Olga Colon, Republican Deputy is Chabeli Gonzalez, and we have 2 data clerks right now, Gloria Bell Santiago, and we have a new one, Diane Torres, who just joined us not too long ago during the this past election. Go ahead. Our highlights are pretty much as we do every year for the upcoming 21 will be to continue to maintain the voting tabulators and preparations for the elections that are mandated by the Secretary of State, accuracy and daily updates, completing record retention, maintenance and enrollment, Canvas and DMV, promoting voter education by engaging and informing citizens in the electoral process with the goal to increase voter participation, including all of Hartford High School's registrations. We continue to make sure we meet all of our citizens' needs when it comes to the voting rights. We also do our continued training to all the poll workers. We conduct our annual voters canvass per the court decree. So far, we have processed 68,000 canvas cards that were mailed out to everyone. We did all active and inactive voters this year, and we're slowly getting them in. Of course, responsible for the annual budget, and of course, comply with any of the Secretary of State's mandates and the calendars that we are subject to. We have processed to date 7,225 new voter registrations, and this, when I say that's a large number, a good chunk of it was during the primary and the November election, but this was the process of all these voters that came in from the beginning of this budget year to now current when these presentations were put together. And we continue to attend our ROVAC conventions and so forth via Zoom as mandated, so we can continue with our certification. Go ahead. As always, we maintain our voter files and tabulators and preparations. This is going to be a repeat of everything that we engaged in, promote the voter education. What we did do this year is really go into with our office and with the grant monies that we did receive. We are working very closely with Vote Coalition Group, and we're trying to really promote and see if we could get a high number for the Board of Education election. Normally that's one of our lowest turnouts, but we're trying to see how we can spice it up a little bit to see if we can get a little bit more attention now that everybody is nationwide glued to the TV with all of the new stuff that are going on with this past election. And again, working closely with the Secretary of State, and go on. As you see, we're just up 0.6%, and those are contractual. Other than that, we're at a flat rate, no increases, except for that one piece. These are the highlights of what's coming up. We've already begun our canvas. The party endorsement begins in July. The endorsement, the nominating petitions for August, the petitions, and then if we have a primary for September 14th, then the November election, the post audit, excuse me, and then for 2022, we prepare for the Democratic Town Committee members or Republican, if they should have a race. Other than that is to continue with our SOTs and our ROVAC conferences as mandated. This is just, as always, a list of all the legal, not all of them, but partial legal mandates that we follow under the state statutes. of our guidelines, just for your previews. And I believe that's it. And I will take any questions.
Thank you, Madam Registrar. Any questions from my council colleagues? Thank you for your presentation as well. And I just want to say thank you for your hard work in ensuring we had a safe and fair election last year. You all also too were in the front line, and very thankful for the work that you put into making sure that our city's residents had a safe and fair election.
Thank you, Majority Leader.
Councilman Gale.
Thank you, Majority Leader, and let me echo those sentiments, Madam Registrar, and let me echo the sentiments of Councilwoman Surgeon earlier. You know, in terms of being proud of your city, and I can't say how proud I was of Hartford and the performance during the last election, both the town clerk's office and your office, and you know, pulling this off in the midst of this pandemic and doing so in a relatively seamless fashion. There's Councilwoman Rossetti, right? Yeah.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah,
we wouldn't have done it without the staff. Wonderful.
Yeah, so kudos to your staff, and but we know staff requires leadership, and so kudos to you for that. One question, you mentioned some attempts to increase voter turnout for the Board of Education election coming up, and I'm intrigued. I'm just wondering what you might be able to share with us at this point that you have in mind.
So because we received the second portion of the grant, and we have some monies, and ROV on a constant yearly basis, this is nothing new, has worked with the Voter Coalition Group in assisting with, Voter Coalition actually assists ROV and a lot of the candidates and so forth in putting up the forums, doing voter registration drives, the list can go on and on. So when we got the grant, my question to the group was, how can we improve the voter turnout for the September election or November with the Board of Ed? It's one of our lowest ones. Many moons ago, Voter Coalition did an outreach of registration with going out, but it specified only in one group. So this time we're going to do an entire citywide, so it's not going to be concentrated on one ethnic group. And we have Christine Clark. We're trying to get the Hartford Parent University people involved. We're trying to get small groups to see how we can motivate the turnout a little bit more. So we have we have a website now along with the Voter Coalition that's adding on information. We have the Women League of Voters, who's part of this coalition as well. And we have the UConn students, Trinity, who have thrown a lot of blogs out there of trying to motivate young students to get more involved within politics and in voting. So we're trying to find different angles. It's still in the works, but hopefully by the end of June, we'll have something concrete, and working with the Hartford Public Library now that they're going to be ensuring where the grant monies are going to be. We can make sure that we can try to target as many groups as we can to come out and vote.
Well, thank you for that. And if you have that website at some point, I'm sure all my colleagues would.
I will submit it to you via email.
Share it with us. We'd love to see what get a link to that website for the.
Will do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else?
Surely.
I am not going to be long. I know
it's getting late. We're getting
okay, guys.
Loving the hair, by the way, Shirley.
You know, I swear, Gigi, they do this to me every night.
I know. I've been watching them.
Oh my God. Well, I just want to say, Gigi, and to you and the other registrar and your staff, fabulous job last year. Just a wonderful job. It was so wonderful that got so many kudos about what Hartford did. So,
Thank you.
we always get blamed for everything. So it was really nice that to see all the positive information from that Hartford did a great job, especially in a pandemic year last year. A couple of things I just wanted was to take a look at and jog my memory. In your strategic highlights initiative, you talked about your canvas pursuant to the state statute and court decree. What are we doing in addition to the state statute regarding the court decree?
Excuse me, allergies. So besides the postcards, we're getting a lot of these little sweet NOCAs.
I'm sorry?
The NOCAs, the change of addresses.
Yeah.
So what we're doing, instead of doing the inactive piece, we're actually outreaching to the voters via mail or phone calls. We're trying to, before we make them inactive, because one of the biggest things that we find is when they go to vote, they get irritated when they find out they're inactive. You know how it goes. Mm-hmm. Other than that, there's not too much that we are doing with the consent decree, because I'm not really too familiar of what other pieces we have to follow with the consent decree. So that's something I have to work on.
Okay, so basically we don't know what the consent decree requires us to do.
Not fully, no. All I know is the canvas cards, making sure that we outreach as much as possible to make sure that they remain as an active voter. Other than that, I have not really gotten the formal 411 on what the consent decree is really out there. I know that it was basically that we were removing a lot of the voters. The basics of the decree was that we were removing a lot of the voters because there were a lot of moving at the time. Because we do have a large transition community.
Okay,
and
so
that's how it all came about.
Yeah, when you find out, could you let us know what
I
that?
will. I'll reach to our corporation counsel to give me a little bit more highlight.
Right. Just want to make sure that we are adhering to whatever that decree is.
So far, no complaints.
Yeah. Now there's a couple of things happened last year. Have you and the other registrars going to do like a review? There's a few polling places, which was unbelievable long line, but it was a tough year. Are you and the other registrar going to review and see what we can do, to avoid that? I know this year may not be a large turnout election, but we're going into a gubernatorial year next year.
Yeah.
So
we're also going into the changing of the district lines, so we don't know where that's going to end.
Yeah.
I would love to see several polling places, at least like the Grace Lutheran on Woodland, although it's a convenient one, it's a small one. I know Rawson was very long. I think what happened was we didn't expect that many people to actually come out in person to vote. And we tried to fill our polling places as best as we could to get the voters out there in a timely fashion. I did go out there during the election and try to pull out as many as I seen elderly that were standing out in the cold lines to bring them in. But that kind of started a little bit of a ruckus on certain polling places. We offered the curbside voting. Many people took advantage of the curbside voting when we started seeing the line, and especially I wanted to target a lot of the elderly folks that were out there standing in line. But I want to see where the lines lead later on this year, hopefully, and see if something is going to change. And then that's another sit down with the town clerk's office to see if we all agree of possibly moving some of the smaller polling areas.
Okay.
I know we're going to lose Messner, so due to the daycare center expanding. So we have to figure out if Naylor's going to be a permanent area for this year. So
Yeah.
we're working on that.
Okay. Well, you got your hands filled with the redistricting happening this year. So you're going to have two really busy years, last year, this year. And so, but I commend you and your staff for a fabulous job last year. You guys made Hartford proud.
We would
So
not
thank
have done.
you.
Thank you.
And keep
You're
up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you again to you and your staff for your hard work. A couple of questions. And Councilwoman Surgeon touched upon, I know you did as well, regarding redistricting. When is that going to be? Any indication when that's going to be finalized?
That's all on the state. When the delegation tells me these are the lines, these are the places, then we'll move from there.
So there's a possibility, let's say, that the polling precincts could increase or they could decrease?
It could. I mean, it all depends on how they decide to draw the lines or where.
And how is it that a polling precinct will be declared a polling precinct? What are the steps that you have to go through?
Well, it all depends on what we, first of all, I know that I have to come into agreement with not only the Secretary of State or inform them, but the town clerk as well has to be informed. We have to do a major mailing to inform all those voters that their places have changed. So I might be coming back to you guys and saying, hey, if this happens, I need more money to do that type of thing, to inform all our voters. So it's a way to see. This is going to be my first one, so I'll learn as I go along.
Well, I remember the last one, and that was that was huge. That was major. So any support that you need, please don't hesitate.
I won't. I won't. You know I won't.
I know for that. Looking forward to it, helping you. Also, too, curbside voting. I did see that, especially when I was over at Rawson. Yes, there was long lines. I did see you try to pull people out, and thank you for doing that. Now, would curbside voting be a continual thing that your office will be implementing, or that was just like a one-off?
That was there are certain rules to it, and Shirley can correct me, and Councilman Surgeon can correct me.
The curbside voting to help out the registrar happens at all the election.
Yep.
Basically, the state regulation says if you get to the polling place, you can't get out of your car for whatever reason. You can request curbside voting. Last year we allowed it because of the COVID, and COVID was a reason that you did not want to interact with a lot of people. So the voters were allowed to use COVID and do curbside voting.
Right.
Do we know that if that is part of the General Assembly's bill?
No, it's part of the legislation that's been passed already.
Okay.
It has been passed.
Okay, it's already passed. Oh, wonderful. Okay, perfect. All right. Any other questions from my colleagues? Seeing none.
You guys really want to go home.
They do, Gigi. They don't want to ask any questions. They just like.
I expected a little bit more.
Oh, that means that means
Gigi,
that you have done a phenomenal job.
Yeah, if you want more questions, Marilyn, you got a question?
I'd like to say that is the result of a very thorough presentation.
Very thorough.
Colleagues asking questions.
Very thorough.
Thank you. You guys must come. Finally, the ROV office has been, our asbestos has been removed. We have new rugs. We have a new ROV office, kind of, sort of. Everyone's welcome to come and see the new digs. And I thank the administration for making that happen.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for your work. Councilwoman Rossetti, this is not Miss Feliciano's first rodeo. So,
I believe I know that.
yes. So she knows how to put a presentation together. So no,
I appreciate you guys.
Phenomenal job. Thank you so much. And
no
again,
problem.
Please don't hesitate to reach out and send our regards to the rest of the staff in the office.
I will. Without them, it wouldn't have happened.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And of course, the former Republican registrar, Sheila Hall, was a great assistance when she was,
Yes.
Yeah.
she was part of it. So I have to really say thank you to Sheila Huff.
Thank you for that. All right,
Thank
this
you.
concludes our budget hearing for tonight. Tune in tomorrow where we will conclude our budget hearings. We will have the Office of the Corporation Counsel, the Office of the Chief Operating Officer, and the offices of the mayor. And we will be back at 5:30. And thank you very much and have a good night. And this concludes our budget hearings for tonight. Take care.
Good
Good
night.
night.